All right, today is Wednesday, October 13, 2021, and it's time to buy more shares into the $1 million portfolio. So, my investment policy statement says that I should do this every second Tuesday of the month, but yesterday was a travel day for me for work, so I wasn't able to do the buy. So when things like that happens, it's okay to adjust things by a day forward or a day backwards. It doesn't really matter as long as you have a plan and you mostly stick to it. So before we make our buys, let's go ahead and take a look at the $1 million portfolio, which is no longer $1 million. So as of today, based on current values, it's at about $990,000. So in September, I added to this portfolio roughly about $1,500 or so. So there was a contribution of $1,500 to this portfolio, yet it still went down. And what this works out to be is about a decline of 1.2%. That's including the contribution, which I don't think is actually that bad when you consider that for the month of September, the market was down like 4.5%, 5%. So being down 1.2%, not a bad thing. All right. I still have a pretty hefty allocation to the REIT. So during this buy, I don't need to increase those holdings at all. The same with gold. So it really is just purchasing more of the NASDAQ 100 and more of the long-term treasury. As I execute these trades, I will talk a little bit more about TLT, the long-term treasury in particular. But let's go ahead and do the buy. So last month, I had intended to add about $30,000 to the portfolio. And what had happened was that I had some outstanding options that reduced the amount of cash that was available to buy shares. And I made that adjustment for this month, so I'm fine with the cash. So here's how it's going to work out. We're going to buy 68 shares of the NASDAQ 100. That's going to be worth about $24,400. The bid-ask spread on the NASDAQ is super small, so I'm not really concerned about doing a limit order, especially with these quantity, so market order is fine. I'll go ahead and review the order, and we'll go ahead and place it. All right, it's done. It should be executing any second now. We'll switch to the other tab and do the same for TLT. So for TLT, I'm buying 58 shares. That works out to be 8,400. So if you add 8,400 to 24,400, you get about 32,500. That's where I wanted to be. So we'll review this, place the order, and again, it will get executed any second now. We are doing this live. So let me go ahead and refresh this. And my share should increase accordingly. So I had 669 before, I think, for QQQ. That went up. And then I had whatever for TLT, and that went up as well. So the buy is complete. Let's take a minute. I don't want to make the video too long for these monthly, kind of buy into the portfolio. But let's take a minute to talk about TLT, which is the iShares Long Term Treasury ETF. So one thing that I did decide to do was I'm going to buy into TLT, at least for the foreseeable future, instead of individual bonds. I may do that as well. And if I do decide to do that, you'll see me executing those buys, on these monthly updates. But I want to talk more about the long-term treasuries because of what we're seeing with interest rates and inflation and all that stuff. It seems like this transitory inflation is going to be with us for a while, so it may end up not being very transitory. But I guess the bottom line is, does anyone really know? And I think the answer to that is no. No one really knows, right? But this is the effect and why I want to talk about it and think about it. If it does kind of rise up more and much more quickly than anyone expect, the Federal Reserve will have to raise interest rates to help, keep it under control. Because if they don't and let it, kind of go crazy for too long, they're going to have a very hard time reining it in. That's just the reality of monetary policy and how that all works. The problem with raising the interest rate is that long-term bonds are extremely sensitive to rate hikes just because of their long duration. So if the long-term rates go up significantly and quickly, the price of long-term bonds are going to get hammered, right? And that worries me. And but I think that here's my conclusion. I'm going to keep to the plan because that's the reason you have a plan. If you listen to Jack Bogle, he always says, stay the course, right? And that's part of this. My thinking is twofold on this front. One, if rates go up, but they go up slowly and smoothly over time, it's not going to hurt me too much. I mean, yes, it will go down, but it won't be, a dramatic drop, suddenly. So it won't hurt me too much if it's steady. But, we don't know how that's going to go, so we can't really count on that. But that's part of my thinking. The second bit is that I have a relatively small portion of this $1 million portfolio in long-term bonds, right? We're talking something like, right now anyways, maybe about 12%. And I have a large cash position that I am going to keep investing into this portfolio on a monthly basis over the next, 16 to 18 months. And I think that over the next 16 to 18 months, the inflation situation will become clearer, and rate hikes and all of that will also get clear and get priced in. And in the meantime, I'm just buying in. So if we were to have, this massive rate increase and this high inflation that forces that massive rate increase, which then causes these long-term bonds to go down, I'll just be able to buy more of it in this period where I am moving all of my cash into this allocation. And then after that, it's just an annual rebalancing. So I think that because I'm buying in, it's almost like contributing, on a regular basis. You're dollar cost averaging, right? So if newer shares of these long-term bonds cost less, I'll be able to buy more. And over time, hopefully everything stabilizes. And if you're at a high interest rate position, I mean, high compared to historical means, it's not really high at all, right? Even if we go to 4% on the long-term side, which would be crazy compared to where we are today, it's not that high, compared to historical numbers, right? But if we were at such a number, what that actually means is that over the long term after that, there's room on the downside for rates to go down even more. And if that happens, the inverse will happen with bond prices where they'll go up significantly. That's that, long-term bond convexity that you might have heard about. So bottom line, I do think about it, but I have a plan and I plan to stay the course. So we will keep buying into this allocation over the next 16 to 18 months. Probably more like, since I've done this 2 months now, I'm going to say over the next 14 to 16 months. And just buy into this allocation regardless and try to bring it to that allocation that I had decided for this portfolio. Anyways, thanks for following along on this month's addition to the portfolio, and keep on checking back, and hopefully we'll cross that 7-figure mark again in November. Thanks everyone. See you later.